So we proceed this way, and I would like to give you the floor to say to ask you if you have something to say on specifically.
Okay, good afternoon. There's one or two comments that I'd like to make, but maybe I'll just start with the question about access. Coming from an emerging economy or developing economy myself, I'm from South Africa, there seems to be a continuous tension between affordability, access, and quality of healthcare, and then, of course, personalized medicine. And we've had some presentations which has indicated that the cost of this sort of healthcare system is been decreasing and will continue to decrease over the next, short term, basically. And for me, I'm just wondering what happens in a sort of emerging economy when the knowledge is available, genome sequencing is present, and when a population becomes informed about the state of their health. Who then fits the bill for insurance for long-term healthcare disability? South Africa has a very low tax base and no health system to speak of. So, and the majority of the population cannot afford healthcare for sure. So then how do we manage to service these individuals once we provide them with this information about the state of their health? So that's a question I'd like to address.
But you agree that we could address it when you speak about the impact on the society? Yeah. Do you have another, let's say, comment you would like to make which was not made in the presentations?
Well, I know that basically for emerging economy, this is considered an opportunity for an economic opportunity. But what about there's a reallocation of scarce resources, sure, but into what? Into investment opportunities, but what about the lack of human capital in these economies, for example? We have a very low skills base. In South Africa, maybe 28% of all matriculants, which is a grade 12 pupil, maybe 28% pass maths, 25% pass science. There's no capacity to extend this sort of system over the long term. So there are a lot of gaps in these sort of economies that needs to be addressed, and this is something that we can maybe talk about.
Mm-hmm. Janet?
Yeah, I would like to actually make one point. So first of all, I think all the speakers before were really, really good and well and made their point. What I would like to stress is more again the ethical point, and we heard from different countries, like from China, for example, where parents can test their kids, for example, for whether they're good at sports or at music or whatever. I think these are also issues that are not only a subject in other countries, but may also be of importance for example, Switzerland. And I think, therefore, we cannot really say that there are no ethical issues here, and we'll probably also hear more about that tomorrow. But I think that's something we also should discuss, all the ethical issues. Point to that more.
Assis.
Good afternoon. The personalized medicine is something brand new. It's a new story. So when the new things come to the stage, there's always a lot of questions without any answers. So there is also the same story is happening here with this personalized medicine, and the first issue is access. But the question of access is not a question which is just about the personalized medicine. This is the question about even the traditional medicine. So this is the goal of, the all medicine, blah, 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 in different industries. But what do you think? Is the access to the personalized medicine is the attainable goal? And I'm still thinking about this issue, and I have nowadays it's not so expensive as it was like 10 years ago, but it's still expensive, and the countries with the emerging economies cannot use it right now. But I'm dealing with the medicine, I'm a medical doctor, and nowadays in Uzbekistan, the small project started. I mean, it's not like a personalized medicine, but it's dealing with the sex selection. It's about PGD, and everything will start it in developed countries, and one day will come to the, developing countries. And I hope it will be. Thank you.
Judith.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. I would like to make two statements. The first one is about, it's like from my perspective as a researcher, because I'm a genomic, I did my PhD in genomics, and I just love data, and I love to compare different things. And I think from a researcher's perspective, it's really a pity how much data goes missing by not like sequencing all the people that go to the doctor. I mean, you have to think about, if you think about it the other way, that we waste so much information that we could actually gather to get better information about future drugs or drug treatment. And I think if we just change this perspective, it's kind of a different view on personalized medicine. And then, of course, my second point is concerning the developing countries. Of course, it's not they are not in the same state. I mean, that's why we always think about the first world and the third world. But I think there is a great opportunity. I mean, there is this one example, I think in India, where almost everybody has a mobile phone, but hardly anyone has a phone line at home. So it's basically the opportunity for developing countries to just skip one step and go to the next one immediately. So actually, the personalized medicine is a huge chance also for these countries that once we developed it to a level where it's actually usable and useful, that they can jump directly onto it without making all the steps that we have done in between. So I think that perspective is also quite interesting to discuss.
In fact, it's an ideal opening or introduction of the next general discussion now, because we thought we would discuss future of personal medicine, diagnostic, treatment, prevention, and so on, within the perspective of the different countries. So it would be interesting to follow up just this question you raised. Is it worth to make efforts, and we would like to have your comments, to make efforts that in certain countries, like those we heard about, where priorities are different, is it still worth to make efforts that one make jumps in information or in practice? Is there any comments in the audience about that?
Thanks. I would be very interested in your perspective on income. The kind of healthcare treatment that you would find in Switzerland or somewhere in Europe. China already looks larger than Germany. India is about the same size as France. And so there's a huge issue of heterogeneity in developed or developing countries, and I'd be very interested in your perspective as to how do we cope with this, because obviously, you know, for the, whatever it is, 80 million people in China who are already accessing the kind of healthcare that you get in Switzerland, then clearly personalized healthcare is probably important to them, but isn't available for the rest of the society. What do we do about this?
Mm-hmm. I forgot to mention that if one of the speakers who are there want to comment, you should go ahead, okay?
I was asking a question of the panel, actually. I don't know when they're going to answer it.
We decided we could not have everyone on the panel, but they also should be included in the discussion, in the responding as well. So, who wants to
Do you want to speak? No.
A quick Hello. Yeah, my response to that would be that it is really a cost deal. Like mobile phones, she gave an example. In India, for 1 franc, you can talk for 1 hour on the mobile phone at the lowest talk plan. So you have to go to extremely low costs to be able to service them, which comes out of innovation, I guess. So I think my answer would be somewhere there.
I'm sorry, that's not true today for, you know, tens of millions of people in India. Because there's a rich upper class and there is a reasonably rich middle class, and they already are accessing the kind of healthcare that we have in Switzerland. And so, you know, we talk. The thing I'm not understanding is we talk as if there was some extraordinary equality, and then we had to invest everything, and everything had to be cheap and cost effective. there's a big chunk of the population that is already accessing this kind of healthcare. So I was interested in your perspective.
Please.
Yeah, obviously income inequality is the most significant deterrent of creating a good healthcare system for everyone, or one of them at least. But I think that you must remember that when you're considering that the portion of the population that actually has control over resources, it is really small in comparison to the people who do not. In India, there's maybe 8%, 4% of the population who actually has access to resources. The same goes for South Africa. Maybe it's 1% of the population. China, maybe it's a bit higher because they've grown so fast, and I'm sure India's that socio-economic group will grow, but the idea is for not to grow so much faster than the rest of the population. So we're not trying to create a system that is elite for a certain group of the population. You're trying to make healthcare accessible for the majority of the population. So income differential shouldn't be you shouldn't be trying to access this market so much. You should be trying to consider the majority rather.
Are you just interested, I'm very interested, are you suggesting a dramatic tax increase for the richer members of these? Are you suggesting a dramatic tax increase for the richer members of society, or are you suggesting constraining their access to technological developments? How do we achieve this?
How do you achieve equality?
Yeah, how do we spread the healthcare
Spread the
benefits
wealth.
that we see coming for the
Yeah.
rest of the population? What do we do?
Well, there are obviously a lot of models. You've been working on I don't know. In South Africa, for example, now, there is a suggestion to tax white, previously obviously empowered families a significant amount of wealth. And it's actually been well received to try and redistribute income, the same with land. So, I mean, there are these sort of extreme models. We're currently working on a national healthcare system which does seek to provide healthcare to the poor section of the population. There's no model that's worked perfectly that I can tell you off the top of my head, but there's obviously the rich have to pay. You have to pay. We have to pay. That's how it works.
Something to that statement.
You did say something.
I think we're talking about two different problems here. So the one problem is healthcare, and it's like healthcare for the first world. Then the second problem is the inequality of money or of wealth in the world. And I'm being very provocative now, but if we really want equality, we just have to drop all our protection. We have to not support our farmers anymore. We have to not put a massive amount of tax on food that comes from developing country. If we really want equality, it's really easy to do, but I don't think we actually want that, because then we wouldn't be rich anymore. And this is a very provocative statement, I know, but I think it's in a sense true, because we're talking about giving money to poor people, but what they need is they need to be able to access our market.
Rodrigo.
I think one of the starting points for the discussions in developing countries whether governments will pay the bill or not. I mean, if all people should have the access to have the right to have access to personalized medicine, because there are many kinds of disease, they are very rare, and for a private company to develop a drug to treat this, develop a methodology, a test, or a medicine to treat this kind of disease, it's no profitable for them. So, but at the same time, this disease, they do not choose the condition of the people. They may affect a rich or a poor people, but when they affect the rich people, they can travel to the United States, they can go around, and they can pay whatever is the price to treat the disease. But when such kind of disease affect poor people, you can imagine that in Latin America, in Africa, in Southeast Asia, there are millions of people living in slum areas, and the problem of this disease does not concern only the individual. It affects the whole community, the whole community they live in, because you can imagine, for example, children with cerebral palsy that I was a friend of mine, and he invited me to go to this place. It was a favela, Islam area, and I went there and I started talking to his mother, and he broke it with his husband because the husband drank a lot, and she has no time to work because she has to be all the time with the children. So actually the disease can create a destructure, a whole community. So I think that's the basic difference when we deal with personalized medicine in developing countries and developed countries. So the question is whether governments will pay the bill or not.
I would like to ask Aziz, also in your country, do you have this caste situation? You have this?
Yeah, you know, that I'm just thinking about that. The question is really nice, but a lot of politicians, I don't know, the public people are thinking how to do it, how to achieve it. But it's not so easy just to sit and give the one answer and say that we will increase the taxes for the rich people and everything will be okay. And of course, it's like a question. It's not a question about the healthcare, personalized medicine. It's the question of politics, question of economy. And for me, we have the same question. We have a class of the people who have millions of US dollars, and the class of the people, which is the big part, have almost nothing. So I hope, I can just hope that in the near future, there will be some kind of equality and access to even the traditional medicine. And later on, we will think about the personalized.
I would like also to ask the reaction of Fatima, who also has a perspective on this issue from Pakistan, certainly.
For me, I think it's not really difficult in terms of like different from what Catherine has already said, that I mean there is a small population who has greater access, and the larger population is. If you have to bring them to equality, they need opportunities. They don't need like money to be given to them. Give them the opportunities to grow and to progress themselves. And the people on ground are very intelligent. They just need to get out of their poverty cycle. And that's basically it's how we can bring the equality and then give them the resources and the education, and they are very good at making very intelligent decisions. And one of the things that the lady said that about making a jump from the mobile phones. One thing that I cannot think of that in personalized medicine is basically what I talked about pharmacies, because unless you do not have an infrastructure in place, at least because the drugs still are made in such a way that they need refrigerators and they need certain conditions. Or if we just revolutionize the whole drug system, drug making way, that you can give vaccinations which does not require certain temperature control or certain conditions, we would still need to go through this step of infrastructure before we can have personalized medication.
Can I just imagine that maybe one day you don't need a doctor anymore. You just put your finger, you get your diagnosis, and then somewhere you order your drug. This is the kind of step that I'm talking about. So you don't need a pharmacist, and we are stuck with the pharmacists because they have a lobby. They don't want to be removed. This is the kind of things that I was envisioning. So
yeah, as a comment. I think the majority of Africa has leapfrogged the whole landline scenario, like you were saying, and everyone uses a mobile phone, and there's a lot of technology that you can monitor your own health, like you're saying, and it's prevalent in South Africa and in Africa, and it's a really useful model, mobile health, and that we can explore. So I just agree, and it's important.
I just would like to add some point that would further complicate the situation of the poor people, is that on one hand, we have the possibility of screening our genome, perhaps paying $10,000 or less, and go and pay the best doctor and the best treatment. And on the other hand, you have nowadays in the internet, you can buy in a drugstore very cheap kits for genetic tests, and you can do by yourself, like, I mean, $100 or even less, and you can check the results online. So you can imagine that these poor people, if they want to know something more about themselves, and they go to the drugstore, buy these kits, and after that, who will advise them about the psychological consequences of you know what you have? I mean, how to proceed after that if you are positively tested for any disease. So it's not just to have access to the test or a treatment, but also a professional advising during the process. That is very important for these people, and I think it's not yet a reality for these poor people.
Yes.
I would like to go back to the financiation issue and direct my question to Rodrigo. My half-sister is born in Brazil, so I'm very much interested also what is going on there. And I would like to know, how do you judge the approach Lula da Silva has taken and probably also will continue of redistributing huge amounts of money from the rich part of the society to the poorer part of the society? How sustainable do you think will that be? Because in the end, maybe they will end up with a TV in their favela hut, but no education, no infrastructure whatsoever. What are the chances do you see in your country and generally in countries with, which have this great dichotomy between rich and poor societal layers? What chances do you see?
Well, I mean, you know, Brazil is an emerging country and is growing very fast. But on the other hand, we are among one of the most inequality countries in the world. We have few people, very rich people, and we have lots of people. Actually, 30 millions of people living below the poverty line. And, but we had recently some advancements in combating hunger, in combating poverty. We had also decreased this gap, but it will take much time for this we have we have halted the poverty, but we have actually a very good system, health system for the public. If you are in any city in Brazil, you can go, if anything helps with you, you can go to the health station and have immediate treatment. However, if something happens, you have a more expensive treatment to be done. You spend much time doing to receive the medicines, and sometimes you have, most times you have to travel to São Paulo, to Rio de Janeiro to do that, and this is still a big problem for we to achieve a good equality in health, in public health. But I think if we look at the sorry, I lost the point. What do you think? What was your question?
So how to make the financiation sustainable? Because right now I think.
Yeah. So actually, our health ministry receives most part of the money, but we have lots of corruption. That is one of the main problems. So it's more or less the same argument that we need first basic medicine, then after that personalized medicine. We need in Brazil to solve many other problems that are related to these inequalities, you know. So we have corruption, we have a lack of integration between government and society. So I think we should. Recently there was a survey in Brazil, and from 1,000 people interviewed, 78% have not ever hear about personalized medicine. So I think we should discuss this more and bring this to the society and exchange these ideas with the government in order to discuss how government can play this role in making personalized medicine, or basic medicine, available to all. But it will take time.
In terms of, do you want to say something?
I just want to comment on your question. How I understood it, you sort of concerned that the redistribution of those resources are going into social grants and then they land up as a TV. And basically what government needs to do is put them into proper education systems, invest in infrastructure that create an enabling environment for the empowerment of individuals as opposed to giving them money. So, investing in those constitutes which create well-being is more important. And I think there is hope for that, as long as the government is able to appropriately identify where those resources need to be allocated. So that's the difference.
Mm-hmm. And Safin wanted to ask something.
No, I just wanted to make a statement and pick up the very excellent presentations from all of you and the clear demonstration what other needs that developing countries have that are far more basic than what we're discussing here. And this is very well understood, and I think you said it right now, that education is probably one of the primary drivers in all the countries to get you to the level that you get clean water, that you get pharmacies with refrigerators that work, etc. This is clear. But I don't think that this is this discussion really about personalized medicine, and I disagree with you that we should not stop everything that we're doing here in the developing world, where we have the luxury of doing these research and these contributions until everyone has clean water. I think we have to do this in parallel. And I'd like to come back to the other aspect of personalized medicine that's again now has gone under a little bit. Personalized medicine is not only that you get your personal drug or your personal treatment. It is also that medicine has become personal, because now everyone as an individual, now in the developing countries mostly, can actually take action and can report this encounter that he has with his doctor or she has with his doctor in a form that is useful for all society. And I think that's even a moral obligation that we have. And this is not only true for the rich world, it's also true for the levels in the developing world, like in India. Jonathan was saying there are many people who can access our health system, and providing their genetic information that is underrepresented in all the studies that we've heard, they actually make a contribution to their own country as well. So all of we in the developing world and in the rich world can already now take action and take medicine personal and contribute to medicine. That's a point that I would like to make.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we will, because of time reason, we will close this subchapter and discuss now the issue of awareness in the different countries, in our own countries especially, but we see, we come from the issue of the education. What are the chances that in other countries the education will go on, and that this education will be able to, let's say, face the issue due to cultural frames, which you mentioned very well, Fatima. So who want to say something about awareness?
I would like to say something, and I would like to pick up a statement that was made by Micha that I thought was really important, that if we have something negatively sticking to some kind of term, that we will believe this is negative. And I think this is what happened to gene technology or something like that, or like anything related to gene. So I think at the moment we are really in a good position that personalized medicine, because it includes the term medicine, is still something that people conceive very positively. And I think it's important that we actually focus on this positiveness, and that it is like perceived still in 10 years also as something positive. So we should focus on not putting any kind of negative terms like gene technology together with personalized medicine, because that would just make people fear the term.
Mm-hmm. Other comments?
Just an additional. I mean, the thing is that like I think especially conferences like this, and like it's now going to probably or hopefully start to be more, will really help to also like, as we heard from Fabian, there's pretty much no newspapers writing about genomics or personalized medicine at all, or when then it's always in connection with economics, not with what actually personalized genomics is. And I think that's exactly the important thing, to actually get to the newspapers, tell them what's going on at the moment, and then kind of reach a broader spectrum of people, and not only scientists and journalists.
Mm-hmm. One thing, in fact, Shuyang, I think you were the one who said the practical physician will also need to be educated, or is it one of, as it was you? So this is an issue I would like to bring, because this is an issue which is in fact general, also in Switzerland as in your own countries. So could you have some ideas how this could be done? And of course, those of you who are now sensitized to the situation will be, in practice in 8-10 years, who knows? But the real issue is now that those practitioners at the moment who, in fact, you said one should not have anymore a situation where a patient fires his doctor. So can you react on this?
It's exactly the problem that I kind of fear with these private startup companies like 23andMe and these websites, that it sounds like they want this stuff to be, or that these are tools for patients against their doctors. And of course, this is the completely wrong approach and will not get close to as many benefits as if the doctors are informed and are on board and are encouraged to use these tools as well. And I hear from a lot of people that the doctors don't want to, for personal and mainly probably economic reasons. But as a still young and idealist aspiring doctor, I think the young generation is still concerned with getting the best results for the patients, so they should be informed about these possibilities as soon as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Maybe I would also like to make a statement. I think companies such as 23andMe, they are good possibilities, but for now I just see them for interested individuals to know more about themselves. And actually this idea is not completely new, that you can also make research out of it, because already now doctors are recruiting patients or asking healthy subjects to participate in research. And there are also mostly very interested people who are participating. And this is actually, it is combinatory effect where we can get the most benefit, is to view it as a new source for recruiting people for research. Yeah, but I still think it's very different what comes into clinics, because I think right at the moment doctors will not really use this kind of data to make diagnosis prevention on patients. Still need a lot of validation, and we need just a lot of security in medicine.
You did one.
Can I just quickly have a statement to your statement against doctors against patients, this kind of thing that you see evolving because of these websites. And I don't think this is true, because actually what these websites would want, or what the ideal situation would be, is that the doctors are going with the patients. So then, in case that your doctor doesn't go with you when you have this website and this additional data, and your doctor doesn't want this, then I agree, then you should fire a doctor. I mean, then you want somebody that goes with you and takes all the data into account. So I think in that respect, you can actually say it's not doctors against the patients, but it's actually patients against doctors who don't want to take the information into account that is available.
If you just go back to our issue, awareness, to ask a question, first of all, you should hear about problem. So then you will go to the doctor and ask what is the really is. Because the personalized medicine is like, you can see that it's the moves toward the powerful, precise, predictable medicine, blah, blah, blah. And this is only the top of the island, top of the iceberg. And the awareness, first of all, we should give the information to the people. And later on, they will start to ask the questions from the professionals. And people talked about articles, and we shouldn't count the articles. In my opinion, we shouldn't count the articles which is published in the scientific magazines, because I don't think that there's a lot of people who is reading like scientific magazines like Science, Nature, and so on and so on. So it should be given to the people in a way that they could understand, and they will have questions and they will go to the doctors. If we talk about the doctors, nowadays in my country, doctors are not ready for the consultation on a personalized medicine, because it's the brand new, and I don't think they have enough information, the skills just to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, please, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it's absolutely not about setting patients against their doctors. It's that this is what we were trying to discuss, and I think you said it rather nicely. The challenge is that the ways in which we have demonstrated clinical efficacy are no longer sufficient. They don't work. You can't demonstrate you can't get for doctors and patients the kind of information you need to say this way of making decisions is better than that way, in the way in which we can. And on top of that, we have one of the major funders, that is the industry, is reducing and will continue to reduce its expenditure in creating data. So therefore we need new ways, and that's why, to enhance this dialogue, I think many of us are very supportive in a greater participation of patients in this dialogue. You maybe don't buy that, but that's the argument. It certainly isn't about. But there is another question I would ask you. So what happens if the doctor is out of line with another doctor or another group of doctors? How do you resolve that? And that's really what we're talking about. We're not talking about patients saying, patients don't usually go to the doctor to say, I want something completely, totally unreasonable that no doctor on the planet would approve. It's about a dialogue between two groups of doctors, and the patient is bringing the perspective of the other group of doctors to their doctor. So how do you resolve that? Other than by getting the information that would help you decide.
Well, I mean, it's a good point, but there's a difference if doctors have a dispute or patients and doctors. Between patients and doctors, you have a certain asymmetry, and knowledge is power. And, well, if some patients start suggesting things, despite they do not fully understand them, this can lead to tensions which are on a whole different level than if two doctors within a hospital or within a doctor's community have a discussion or a problem on a particular issue.
So then you need data to show it.
Yeah, and this is what we're trying to do, is to move towards an environment and a society where we can actually get the data to show what's the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, I'm not, I may be an exception, I'm not completely convinced that there is always such a dissymmetry between the doctor and the patient. In some cases, the patient may know more about recent clinical studies than the doctor, if the doctor is very busy and not a specialist. That's not an uncommon event. Mm. I just tell a story. I have an oncologist friend practicing in the States who, if a patient comes in without having done a Google search, he says, you know, our discussion would be much more useful if you went away and came back next week having done a Google search on your disease. He's an exception, but...
Okay. Rodrigo, you wanted to say something?
Just a quick point that I think when we talk about awareness and personalized medicine, I see a much greater effort of scientists, doctors, and journalists on the need to inform people about the scientific aspect of personalized medicine. How does it work, and how can you solve your problem? And I mean, an attempt to inform the people of the benefits of personalized medicine. But my concern is, I think this is a matter of time. Soon all people will understand that personalized medicine can help us in many forms. But one problem that I think would be difficult to deal with is that our doctors, are they prepared to inform patients about the other consequences of doing the test on yourself? I mean, the psychological consequences and the social consequences of you submitted to a genetic test. Just to give an example, we could have one person that wants to test for a determined disease, and he wants to perform a test, but his brother, his sister, or his familiar members, they do not want to know about it because they share the same genetic information. I mean, partially, but if you know that your brother has a disease, you know more or less the probability of you to carry such disease, and this could lead to somehow a conflict between familiars. Should you have the consent of your brother to perform a genetic test on you? So I think there are many potential psychological impacts when some people do a HIV test, for example, and they discover they carry the HIV, and I know some of them kill themselves. You know, they do not know how to face the problem, and my concern is if our doctors, they are prepared to inform the people about how to deal with these problems.
Yes, please.
No?
My name is Larsens, a medical doctor, not so young but still idealistic. In my concept, it's impossible, to have a fight between medical doctors and patients because they are partners. They have been historically. They are economically, doctors, and therapists, they want to help, and there is always people that needs to be helped. But if we go back about 10 or 15 years, it was exactly the same story with the internet. Will it bring doctors and patients together, or will it split between them? And what I see in Switzerland, I know at least 20 doctors in Zurich who have no email. So, and if as a patient you want to see a doctor who is informed and is going for informed consent, you will not go to a doctor who has no email address. So the market will, by itself, patient will choose the doctor, and you don't fire all doctors at the same time, but you fire one doctor and exchange it for another. And I think this will take care by itself. But the main problem with personal medicine being accepted in Switzerland by doctors is the opposition between evidence-based medicine and personalized medicine. One is based on larger and larger groups, and the other one is more on individuals. And I think this is, a major point in Switzerland, important, for the personalized medicine to be accepted.
Thank you very much. Yeah, in fact, I would also like to have Fatima's reaction, because you mentioned the issue of the religion, and you had this big series of question marks. So, to your point of view, in Arabic countries, in Muslim countries, will the situation be completely different, or what do you expect with all these question marks?
As far as the discussion between the doctors and the patients go, I mean, I think there is not kind of any fight between them. There is basically the patient, when he goes to the doctor, thinks that the doctor knows best, and what he gives to me is the right thing to do. So there is there's no challenge between the two of them, and simply because patients think that they are just not well informed that much.
Right, but this is not exactly what I meant. We speak also of awareness in the society. So if the imam, and this is what you mentioned, if the imam says, there is no way to discuss about this, what will be the success of educating people.
So it's extremely interesting. So I can just mention a short story. I had a discussion with a Jordanian friend who is also a YES alumni, and I asked her that how would the Arab people or the Jordanians would do it, would take personalized medicine. And she said that, okay, let me just talk to my friends and other people and let me get back to you. And and when she talked to her friends, the friends said that yes, we would like to know about it, but only once we have the disease, we would take the medication for it. When she talked to her taxi driver and a shop owner who worked in the downtown Amman area as a souvenir shop owner, both of them disagreed with it, and they cited it towards religious reasons, that we should not predict too much into the future and try to change it when it has not come to us as yet. So the interesting thing is that my friend herself, she suffers from a thyroid gland problem, and she has the hormone levels of thyroxine goes ups and down. And she says that if she had known about this problem in her teenage years, she would have loved to take preventive medication so that she would never suffer from the thyroid gland problem, because now she is almost stuck with it for the rest of her life. So when I said to her that wouldn't your taxi driver want to do the same, like if he had the thyroid gland problem? And she said that yes, he would. So the thing is that once you are in the problem yourself, then the people will be more willing and more be receptive to it. But once you stand outside of it, and more importantly, when you are not even educated about it, because I have my personal experience to trying to explain what are genes to my very intelligent, educated, but unscientific grandparents who asked me, like, what do you do outside, like living abroad? And I couldn't really get far with synapses and neurons and genes and stuff, because the thing is that their exposure to science is very limited. And they tried to understand it, but they could not. So the thing with Islam is that I would say that once they are in it, there will be a group of people who would be receptive to it, even if they do not understand. But I am also fearful of the people who would exploit the masses against such thing. And for that reason, the only thing I can think of is awareness and education. And what the people have already mentioned, which is needed in Switzerland as well, just to get people involved in this discussion and to know about it. Unless they don't even know about it and you just throw it on them, then it's just very difficult for them to accept it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Also, in a developing economic context, the relationship between a patient and the doctor, especially in rural India, is also very emotional, where the doctor is literally treated as God. So the doctor saved my life, and I worship the doctor, and the potential of questioning a doctor is literally non-existent. And that also needs to be factored in when awareness is being created. So yeah, that's just a point out.
It's like that here 20 years ago.
Okay, further comment? Yes, you have a comment in the back. No, you have to use a microphone.
I wanted to come back to the topic of acceptance. And personally, I believe that information is not even that important. I mean, let's be honest, nowadays people get treatment all the time and they're not completely informed what it's about. Important is one thing, will it benefit my health? Yes. And the other part is also, will it bring down costs? And in the long term, yes, it has huge potential to actually bring down the costs. Because all these expensive personalized medicines that we see now being produced by traditional pharmaceutical companies, they're expensive because they integrated in the old part of producing medicines. If we really re-innovate the whole innovation process, it has huge potential to bring down the costs, and that will convince the public.
Thank you. Another comment in the back.
So we talked a lot about acceptance and what we did so far, personalized medicine, the future, the options. One group of people we haven't talked much about are people who live here in Switzerland and simply do not accept the current Western medicine. So alternative medicine, homeopathy, people who come and say, I read that vaccination caused autism, I will not have my children vaccinated. So my question is, does personalized medicine here perhaps offer an opportunity to re-engage these people? Or are these people simply going to completely ignore this move? Or are they actively going to oppose it because they do not believe it? Is this actually a resistance center that we should be wary about? How do these people think about this development? Does anybody know?
Comments first, yes.
Well, I find it very difficult in the first place to know how these people think because they don't believe in. But I mean, also, I mean, they say they don't believe in traditional medicine, but I think as soon as they get sick and they really need some treatment, I'm sure that most of them would go back to the normal treatment and they would leave their homeopathic drops at home. That's just my assumption because I think it's really difficult to predict how somebody would react or how. Even for me, I don't know how I would react if I heard I have this and this disease. I think this is true in general. So I don't know whether personalized medicine would change that so much. Maybe it would help them understand better what's happening with themselves, and that might get them more engaged. But in general, I think as soon as they get sick, they probably will get engaged anyway.
Yes.
I think that was quite interesting, and it resonates for me because in South Africa and Africa, there's a long history of traditional medicine, and I mean indigenous knowledge, not modern medicine, if that makes sense. And basically, they believe that disease comes from displeased ancestor or witchcraft. And I think that it's quite interesting that you say personalized medicine may offer a renewed opportunity to engage with the patient because now there's actually a market for traditional healers in the absence of modern medicine. So this could actually be a good opportunity to re-engage with people who prefer traditional indigenous medicines. So yeah.
But I think in Switzerland the situation is a little bit more complex. I mean, this group of people, let's say from the more esoteric persuasion, which favor homeopathy and other tools, there are some which are militant on that. They wouldn't use any medical treatment or conventional medical treatment. And then I think there's a huge fraction which is just taking it as a complement, as the name already says it, to the classical university medicine which is used. And to the point that Michael made, if they are a danger basically to convince the people of the advantages of personalized medicine, I don't think so, because I perceive the Swiss attitude as very, how to put it, well, let everybody live with their opinions. They will say, okay, well, the alternative medicine, that's fine, just do it, but why not do the other thing? As long as nobody is forced to engage in any treatment, which he doesn't want or doesn't understand.
I would also like to say something about this point. I think alternative medicine also increased in the past years because this, as a reaction to the specialization of medicine. So I think if a patient goes to a doctor, most of the time just wants a cure for this disease, and it's purely scientific and stuff, but especially for chronic diseases, patients also want something on the interpersonal level, and a lot of alternative alternative medicine tries to look at the patient in a more holistic way. I think with personalized medicine, which will actually, I think, create even more specialization in medicine because there will be more patient categories, I can imagine that this even will increase this demand for alternative care and another look from another side of the personality, and also include psychosomatic aspects of treatment.
I could, sorry, until Jonathan gets the microphone, sorry. And I just wanted to respond to that. I think one interesting aspect may be the personal nature of personalized medicine as we've seen it actually live demonstrated by Jamie Haywood and patients like me. I mean, even people who subscribe to sort of, alternative medicines when they really have a disease, They may go at home and see, who has rheumatoid arthritis or these and these pains in my age group, and actually find real stories of people who report how this and this medication has helped them. And if they see that, 10 people have taken this and this drug and it actually helped them, it's probably more personal and will maybe convince them more to, well, maybe I should try that as well. So I think the social network, the social aspect of medicine, I think may be an interesting way to also communicate this information.
Yeah. I just had two thoughts. One is I am personally a huge supporter of alternative medicine, and particularly homeopathic medicine. And my reason is, my and others' experience is when you run a clinical trial in a broad range of indications, one of the biggest effects you see is the placebo effect. So when you give people something, even if it's a sugar pill, and you tell them that this is to treat their disease, it has a dramatic effect on their health. And that is almost all indications. So one of the things homeopathic, I would say, is even better. I'm a bit concerned about some of the seriously toxic plant and mushroom extracts that are given, but homeopathic, natural medicines is perfect. So I would, they're usually cost effective. And if as Ernst was saying, if the personalization of medicine could be used to give an even stronger rationale to the patient as to why this particular homeopathic or whatever would be effective, I think that would be excellent. That's one point. The other is a question. So if you look at epidemiology of what have been considered Western diseases, such as diabetes and cancer, you find a dramatic rise in the developing countries. If we were having this discussion in Scandinavia, there would have been much more discussion about lifestyle, infrastructure, and exercise. And I wondered, I'd be very interested in the panel's perspective on the degree to which, while building with this urbanization, building these mega cities, the degree to which, for instance, bicycle tracks or encouragement not to use cars, to use other methods that have more exercise, is being taken into account, or is it just a free-for-all and we just build motorways anyway? I'd be most interested in your perspective, particularly Fatima's illustration of the infrastructure issues. I think it's very important.
Who wants to answer this question?
I'll take a crack. Don't think megacities are actually being built, but obviously secondary and tertiary cities, the idea is to develop them with a green sort of approach, and within that the multi or integrated transport systems are the most effective, and that includes walking and cycling as a dominant part of that model. No, I think motorways will be important, but it won't be cars. I think bus and train and tram would be the ideal, because you can't actually ride 40 kilometers to work. You need to be aware of where you live, where you work, where you eat, where you shop. So it's not necessarily the ideal system, but where you live, you ride your bicycle to the bus stop, and there's a safe place to leave your bicycle, get on the bus, go to work and come back. Because obviously that's sort of model that is ideal for. No, I don't think. No.
The motivation for much of the re-engineering, if you like, of cities, and the further north you go, the more you see, is actually health.
Yeah.
It's not transport; it's health.
I think. That's certainly pertinent in Scandinavian countries, but in countries in emerging economies and developing countries, that is so far off the radar. A priority is housing, density, getting people to work, and using the most feasible transport model to do that. And as a advantage of that, you get the health benefits. I'm sure you have your Mazda and they planned around this health. Let's do everything, to the most to the best advantage for the human individual, but it's not the case.
Yeah, my suggestion was we could make it an issue because it determines, if you just follow what's being done in the rest of the world, you will end up with a sick population. If you actually proactively said, now how are we going to design our cities for health, you might end up somewhere else.
That's,
I would just
that's,
like to have one
Can I just one finish? That's obviously an ideal scenario, but you have in most of these governing sort of, they're siloed, and there's very little cross-communication between, for example, planning, health, education, economy. So that's ideal, but realistically it doesn't work unless you have a seriously motivated political will, which is organized probably by an intermediary who facilitates significant interaction and continuous exchanges, and is not actually within a bureaucratic institution. It's usually outside and retains a memory of how to plan these sort of things, because it doesn't work, to be honest.
I would like to put from my perspective, I mean from a Swiss perspective, I think we are very determined to have our own decisions. I think we want to decide on our own whether we want to live healthy or not. And I don't think that designing cities in a way that people now think would be healthy, and we don't know whether this is still the same case in 10 years, in 20 years, but then it's something that is built on, and we can't change it so easily. So I think for like these big decisions, I think we still rely on the individual's decision and on the freedom of the individual of how he wants or she wants to live the life. I think what is important, I think prevention and also education in how you can live a healthy life is very important, and I think it should be more on educational level, like in schools, so that you actually support sports or sports clubs and stuff like that, rather than re-engineering some major part of cities where you might just do something that doesn't help so much because you don't know the effect yet.
Scandinavia is a very democratic part of the world.
Very socialistic.
Just a very short comment that I would like to make to this discussion, which is actually I did my bachelor's in Singapore, which is a huge mega city. And right now I'm doing my PhD in Amsterdam, and Netherlands is an amazing country for when it comes to cycling and taking care of healthcare. And the education level is really the same between the two countries. I do not see the difference. So what I would say is that sometimes it's just the temperament of the nation is like where they are heading and what they would like to do. So in Singapore, me personally, because I've grown next to nature a lot in Pakistan, I would love to go to parks, but people would generally just spend their time shopping or just, and they're not really unhealthy, because Chinese food is actually a very healthy diet. So, but the fact is that having those cities, and Singapore is growing at an enormous rate, and there's no health taken care of in terms of infrastructure of Singapore. So, and when it comes to Dutch people, they cannot live without bicycles. So
I think we should refocus on personalized medicine. Because,
Yeah, this is actually exactly the point I wanted to make. It's interesting how large city transport infrastructure can be discussed under the heading of personalized medicine. It wasn't evident from the start, although I understand the point you are trying to make. But basically, this is a problem. No, but I think everyone understands the point you wanted to make, so I don't think you need to explain it, sorry. But I think one of the problems I have with this discussion, and really with all the discussions we've had in this Academia Engelberg this year, is that the very notion of personalized medicine has not been defined in a precise way. And in fact, I see that the word personalized medicine is used to describe problems and ideas that seem to be quite different to me in the way they work. For example, one topic is specializing medicine to focus better on certain illnesses in order to better focus drugs on specific illnesses. This is what Professor Noll was discussing this morning and really has been one of the major focus of the discussion. Another definition of personal medicine that seems to be quite fundamentally different is that of what I would call predictive medicine, where you use genetic information and other information to try to say things about future health of a person. And it seems to be a very different problem in terms of ethical concerns, of social concerns, of political concerns, and also to some degree in technical concerns. And a last item that I did notice came up very often and was a bit mixed with all of it is what I would call medicine 2.0,
with response to Web 2.0, where the social aspect of medicine, bringing people together in terms of building communities rather than breaking up the patient-doctor relation to bring it more into a community issue. Again, it seems to me a completely different topic with different questions and different answers. And merging them all together under the heading of personal medicine seems to me very unhelpful in terms of driving this discussion. So I would like, to hear your comment on that. And I would hope that maybe we can be more precise in the future about what we mean about personal medicine. Thank you.
Could I just, 2 sentences, or 1 sentence? It's about prediction. So what I was talking about was the prediction, improving the prediction that when you give a medicine to a patient, they get better. And genetics is talking about the prediction of what is likely to happen, and thereby changing their behavior to make sure it's less likely. So it is about prediction on a personal level, I would argue.
You wanted to say, but on personal medicine, not on...
Yes. Perhaps it's genetic, but I feel a little bit like my son, that we are scattered in all directions, and so I try to summarize what I understand. And perhaps we can start with where there are most people, namely in India, and there we understood that the country is divided into some people who try to go toward our kind of medicine and those who are forgotten. And there, obviously, what is needed is some kind of global medicine, some global thought on better sanitation and so far. I don't know how this is called, managed medicine or something like that. Now, here we are going to develop toward personal medicine, and we are worried about the price. And especially when we understand that, every one of us is going to become a rare case. And this is going to be expensive. So don't we need also some managed medicine here? Perhaps. And what do we do with personal medicine? Personal medicine, we understood that for the moment, it's not very important for medicine, but it's very important for research. So that's what I understood.
Okay. So maybe we still have 10 minutes, and we should switch gear a little bit. So the last points that we didn't touch, or we wanted to touch as a third chapter, was consequences of personalized medicine for the society. Will we, in the future, have a situation like we have with vaccinations, that one would oblige, let's say, citizens to go through a certain type of test, can be very focused, very simplified, to be better equipped concerning prevention of certain type of disease. This is an extreme example, but maybe we could have reaction on this in function of, we cannot say of the different countries, because it's too difficult to take the angle from different countries, but a general discussion on this issue there, which can be also associated with a legal aspect.
Well, I mean, if you would ask me, I would say yes, we should gather all the data and do research on it. But obviously, we can't just say that. I mean, I think what we really need to think about when we want to implement personalized medicine is about the incentives. I mean, why would people be joining personalized medicine? So maybe they want to contribute to research, which is something that many people want to do. So then, well, okay, you were asking about the consequences. So then say we have implemented personalized medicine, so then we would get more research results, so it would benefit everybody. And even though only few people would give maybe their data to research, from these data we could get better predictions for the society.
Yeah, but, I was going further. You still have the concept, and which is the present concept, that this is a personal decision if you enter or not enter, if you want to have the information or not. But would it come to a stage where a country, where a government would decide everybody has to enter so that we have this type of information concerning this type of, or prevention of this type of disease? Or to be
Well,
put
I
in
mean, for
place?
some drugs, it's already necessary that you do a screen first before you act. I mean, for some cancer drugs, that you need to have the right receptor so that you can actually respond to the drug. And I mean, in these cases, the decision is really easy. So if you want the drug, you get tested, and then if you respond, you get it. For the general screening, that's what I meant. I think we need to have, people need to get incentives to do that. And I don't think we can force people to do it. I don't think this is possible, at least not in democracy.
Yes.
Yeah, so my question would be, are you going to have your genome or your personal data tested after this Congress here? And what would be an incentive for you?
For me?
Mm-hmm.
Well, for me, it would be...
For all of
well,
them.
I think, I mean, at the moment, as it was said already several times, like with these tests that you can do with 23andMe, is mainly to play and like, I mean, you get some maybe useful information, but I think at the moment it's really more to learn more about yourself or to see how you are related to different people. So I think it's kind of a curiosity. So your curiosity gets satisfied by doing this at the moment. And I think, like when you're really sick and you want to get some treatment and you go to patients like me, that is a strong incentive that you actually learn more about other people, and by contributing your data, you know that your disease is going to be, that there's going to be more data on your disease. So that's a strong incentive as well, I think.
So you're going afterwards?
Yeah.
I mean, what about the surprise when you do find out there's something wrong and you just accept it? And the implication thereof of, like what Rodrigo said about who do you have to tell and what is the limitation on that, and to what extent are you obliged?
Yeah, I think still this question I think is really difficult to answer because I just don't know how I would react. And I mean, we have seen some studies about how people react, and that people actually increase their health when they know that something goes, that they are at a certain risk of getting some diseases. So I think such kind of studies are just needed much more, so that we kind of understand how people react. And then there's always probably a class of people that need, like, I don't know, psychological treatment or some support because maybe they don't have a family. I mean, I think like in general, the support that you get from your family is probably what you would need after you get a decision. And then there are some cases where you probably don't have the support. And then we have to think about how we can help those people. But I don't think that we should start with the question of how would we actually treat somebody, how would you help somebody in case he has an adverse reaction. I think we should see how people react, and exactly by doing such studies. And then we can get some general concepts and know more about how to deal with this as a society.
Maybe I can say something to that, because I had my genome done as well. And for the most now predictive thing that they actually ask is Alzheimer's. And they ask you like 3 times whether you really want to know what your state is in that way. And you don't have to know this bad stuff if you don't want to. And you still get all the exciting stuff about like earwax type, whatever, hair color, and look whether that's actually fitting. So I think at the moment that's not really a big issue. And even if, I mean, I know my state now, and my life hasn't changed. And
I think we should acknowledge that how we perceive things is different to how every individual perceives things in a different way based on our past experiences and our genetic makeup. And it's the result of how we make sense of different sets of knowledge and internalize it that will inevitably influence our reaction. So, I'm not against it. I just think not everyone will react in the same way because they have different genetic makeup and different environmental experiences. So I'm just, raising it because it hasn't been.
I saw the one TV show where the Lara Hood gave Hood speaking about this issue, and there was a question like this, and they asked who is going to do this sequencing of the genome. And they're all speaking about this issue, what you're going to do if you find that you will have Alzheimer or blah, 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 the risks and so on. And there was a very interesting thing. he just said, first of all, there is many companies who are doing the sequencing, but no one is counseling before doing it. You should, first of all, most of the people are doing the sequencing of their genome just for fun, because they promised or because the people come together and said, we'll all do the same. And the best thing, I think, I don't know how it's happening, the sequencing. First of all, there should be the counseling. So they should counsel that the sequencing can bring you this kind of information. So are you ready to have this information or not? And I think this will be the best way just to decide it.
That's not your personal choice anymore.
They give you information you are choosing.
So 20 years ago, it was unthinkable for me that everybody gets his fingerprint. It was only used for criminals. But today, if you want to go to the States, you know, everybody has his fingerprint. And it's individual and it's biometric. And 10 years ago, if I saw a patient, the diagnostics was sacred. With the new law, everybody, if you go to the hospital, you have full text diagnosis. So who can imagine? For me, it's not unthinkable anymore that within 20 years, another 20 years, you know, your genome, you have to, make it public.
For me, this is a very important point. That's why my concern is more on the purpose of doing the test than to do the test itself. In Brazil, actually, we are not. If you the policemen stop you in the car and they want to see if you drunk alcoholic beverage and then ask you if you want to blow the equipment, you are not. You have the right. You have the right to not blow the equipment. And if some person accuse you of a crime, and if there is a possibility to know who is the criminal by doing a genetic analysis, you are also not obligated to give your blood to do the analysis. So in Brazil, I don't think that will be in the next, few years a problem that example I give in my presentation. But I agree with you that there are many instruments in this society for the controlling, for monitoring people. And I could imagine if we start to analyze, doing research with criminals and start to associate bad behaviors with genes, with DNA markers, and who will decide what is bad behavior and what to do when a person fits in that genetic profiles of a bad behavior of a criminal, for example. So my concern is more how we will, the purpose of the personalized medicine tests.
Okay. I think we should, a last quick question or last quick comment. Okay. You wanted to say something, yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Young scientists have the priority.
Okay, thank you. I actually also really doubt that you can force, especially people in Switzerland, to really provide or just give to the public their genome data, because already now we have a lot of data in pathology, tissue samples and biopsy samples, and it's not natural that you just give them to research. You need patient consent. This is very important. And also what Judith said, it's in Switzerland it's impossible. You have to give incentives for people to actually donate. But I definitely think that somehow all this will change a little bit society. And it was also previously a question of you, Mr. Monach, that doctors also should change their way of thinking. This is a new possibility for everyone, so for doctors to have to contribute more to research, but also for patients, of course, new ways to learn more and to know more about himself, and also to contribute, of course. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think these are also words of conclusion. Looking at the watch, I have to frame up. First, I would like to thank Academia Engelberg to really insist to have this contribution of the young scientists, to invite young scientists and to ask them to contribute to the meeting. And I would like those of you young scientists who have spent time to prepare their presentation, that it was extremely well prepared and so on. And also all of you who talked together during the last few days in order to put your ideas and exchange your ideas, and also to the audience to participate in this discussion. I would like to thank you all. I think what is important is not so much the diversity in the palette of reactions which we saw this afternoon, but I think it illustrates this diversity. It illustrates that, as many speakers mentioned, that personalized medicine is now at the beginning. And hopefully within years, in fact, this broadness of the palette of reaction will slowly crystallize on certain lines or focus on certain lines. But it was, I feel, necessary to have this reaction today. So thanks to everyone.